Right now, artificial intelligence in healthcare consists primarily of highly specialized static diagnostic tools performing single, isolated tasks. These models take a specific input, like an imaging file, and provide a localized, unmoving prediction. The software does not act, it only analyzes. Because of this predictability, many professionals believe current FDA software as a medical device frameworks can be adapted for any future medical AI. That belief is now being challenged by the arrival of autonomous AI agents. Relying on point-in-time validation to govern these dynamic systems creates a massive liability blind spot within clinical settings. The Task Force for AI Agents in Healthcare defines an agent as a system possessing two distinct capabilities: external tool access and autonomous decision-making. To see the difference, look at the cyclical architecture of an agentic workflow compared to the linear path of traditional AI. Inside that cycle sits a reasoning engine. Upon receiving an input, the engine evaluates the data and determines the next logical action needed to reach a conclusion. This engine can actively query external clinical databases to retrieve missing information, pulling live patient records back into its reasoning loop. Once the agent gathers sufficient data, it initiates an action based on its own internal evaluation. These recursive, independent actions break existing FDA compliance frameworks, which were designed to validate static, predictable outputs. Safely deploying these systems requires a total regulatory rewrite, focused on the mechanics of autonomous decision-making. The first constraint for clinical agents is absolute. In a medical environment, autonomy cannot exist in a vacuum. For an agent to be safe, it requires a mandatory gatekeeping mechanism, human-in-the-loop oversight. Every critical action proposed by the agent must be routed through this human gate for authorization before the system is allowed to execute. In high-liability healthcare environments, autonomy is defined as highly supervised delegation, ensuring clinicians remain at the center of every automated decision. Because agents learn and change over time, traditional software testing is insufficient. A single test cannot guarantee the future behavior of a dynamic model. We must replace point-in-time testing with continuous risk mitigation through a standard called artifact lifecycle traceability. This process begins by logging the raw training data used to ground the agent's reasoning. Next, the system must record the specific model architecture that processes that data. The final logging phase captures the empirical testing results of the agent's actions in the field. Compliance requires an unbroken chain of evidence that links these three discrete phases together. If a failure occurs during treatment, the error can be traced precisely back to its source, whether that was an architectural flaw or a bias in the training data. By making every decision auditable, artifact lifecycle traceability provides the structural proof needed to mitigate the risks inherent in autonomous decision-making. To transform these requirements for traceability and oversight into a functional system, we need an infrastructure bridging the gap between technical security and federal law. The task force proposes this specific triad of solutions to replace legacy guidelines. At the top is HAARF, a compliance framework built to help agents meet FDA registration requirements. HAARF provides the rulebook, turning high-level safety mandates into specific engineering constraints for developers. Because agents use external tools, they require a dedicated security layer, which we call QFIRE. QFIRE remains open source, allowing the healthcare community to update security tools as new vulnerabilities are discovered. The third pillar, standardized external audits, is necessary to prove that HAARF and QFIRE are being used correctly. These audits actively verify that the system's evidence chain and security protocols are intact and operational. A neutral, non-profit auditing process will accelerate FDA reviews by providing the agency with pre-validated safety data. This triad infrastructure provides the necessary blueprint for moving AI agents out of the lab and into clinical environments. Stepping back from the technical architecture, we must now look at the immense pressures defining modern clinical environments. Most modern healthcare networks are currently facing severe, compounding staffing shortages that threaten patient care. Innovation is further slowed by the high litigation costs associated with medical errors and a lack of clear accountability. Well-regulated autonomous agents can address these staffing gaps by safely managing routine, high-volume clinical workflows. Simultaneously, the task force's traceability frameworks reduce litigation risk by providing undeniable evidence for every action the system takes. In high-stakes healthcare, rigorous accountability and absolute traceability function as the foundational requirements that allow autonomous deployment to proceed. The Task Force for AI Agents in Healthcare is the community currently building these specific compliance and security frameworks. Success depends on clinical experts who can define the safety requirements for complex medical workflows. We also require technical and regulatory specialists to build the open-source tools and FDA-ready legal pipelines. The future of safe medical AI will be built through collaborative, open standards.